Hi students, good afternoon to one all. I think last class we have studied irrigation, how irrigation is going to be done. That is methods of irrigation, traditional method, then modern method. In traditional method, rahit and all mode how it was used, and what are the advantages of this modern method. Actually, excessive irrigation is done, then what will be its advantages and disadvantages. I think we have studied sprinkler as well as drip irrigation. So I think types of irrigation we have studied. So now, once the irrigation is over, types of irrigation is done, then we'll be switching to crop protection. Crop protection. We have struggled hard to grow the crops, and even we have struggled hard to water it, means to irrigate it. Once this watering is done, then what we have to do? We have to protect that crop. Is that right? We have to protect crop. Then how to protect those crops? There are many methods used in this crop protection, but we'll be saying only three. One is scarecrow. First one is what? Scarecrow. What is this scarecrow? The word scare. I don't know how many of you are aware about the word scare. Actually, there will be a statue like which will be put in the field, right? It will be looking like human beings, the statue of human beings with the pot kept it reverse. Is that right? I think you have seen that. So what these scarecrows, what actually these statues are doing is, all those birds who think that there is a human being in the field, so we should not enter it. That is the reason why these scarecrows are kept. The major role of these scarecrows is to keep all the birds away from the field. Then which is next? Use of pesticides. Second one is use of pesticides. Means we are going to use pesticides to maintain our or to protect our crop. So it is important to keep our crops protected from fungus, from microbes, and from pests. So what we are going to do here is we are using a chemical substance called pesticides. What is that? Pesticides. What these pesticides are doing? Actually, these pesticides are killing the pests but not harming the crop. So actually the role of these pesticides is to kill the microbes or kill the fungus or kill the pests, but these pesticides are not at all going to harm our crops. So what are those pesticides? Actually these pesticides are poisonous in nature. These pesticides are poisonous in nature. It is going to kill the pests, microbes and the fungus, but it is not going to harm our crops. These pesticides include insecticides, then fungicides, then rodenticides. What is that? Rodenticides. So these are types of pests used, right? So what these pests are doing, one is insecticides, the other is fungicides, the other is rodenticides. What this insecticides pest is doing is it is killing insects. What this insecticide is doing is it is killing insects. Then what about this fungicides? This fungicide is killing fungus. Then what about this rodenticides? It is killing rats and mice. So these are the types of pesticides that we use often. One is insecticide, which is going to kill insects. One is fungicide, which is going to kill fungus. And the other one is rodenticides, which is going to kill rats and mice. Then commonly used pesticides are DDT. DDT, Gamaxin, Malathion, and BHC, and heptachlor. Is that heptachlor? And methyl parathion. Methyl parathion. So these are the commonly pests that are used. The earlier which we saw were also used. There is insecticides, insecticide, fungicide, and rodenticides. And apart from that, we have some common pesticides which are used: DDT, Gamaxin, heptachlor, malathion, methylparathion, and BHC. What does this DDT stand for? It is dichlor, diphenyl, tetra, it is trichloroethane. So this DDT powder, they'll be telling, I don't know how many of you know that word, DDT powder. So what that DDT is, it is actually dichlordiphenyl trichloroethane. Then coming to BHC, what is the expansion of BHC? It is benzene hexachloride. Benzene hexachloride. So these are some common pests that are used to remove pesticides. Then next we have weedicides. That is weeds. What is that? Weeds or weeding. Weeds are weeding. Okay. Actually, what are these weeds? These are the unwanted plants that grow in the field. If they are unwanted, then why should we remove those? Actually, weeding means it is the process of removing weeds from a field. The process of removing weeds from a field. When they are unwanted, why we should remove them? If we do not remove, what will be the impact? Okay. If these weeds are not removed regularly, if these weeds are not removed at regular intervals, then it is going to harm the crops that we have grown, right? It is going to damage our crops, and even the crop yielding is also going to be low. So what we have to do? We have to keep removing weeds at frequent intervals of time, so that there shall be no growth of weeds in the field. If weeds are there and if we don't remove it, then it is going to affect the yielding of our crops. There will be damage on the crop yielding. So what we have to do? We have to remove weeds. So weeding is the process of removing weeds from a field. Then how this weeding can be done? It is done by regularly three methods. One is mechanical method. Here in mechanical method, weeds are removed by hand. Weeds are removed by hand, or instrument is used like kurpi. I know all of you might be knowing the word called kurpi, which is used for removing weeds. So removing these weeds is of three types. In that, first one is of mechanical method. Here in this mechanical method, we are going to remove the weeds by hand or by using implements like kurpi. Is this clear? Kurpi, the other word for kurpi is a harrow. So these two implements are used to remove weights apart from by our hands. So that is why this is said as mechanical method. Then the next is chemical method. The next one is chemical method. The word itself states that here chemicals are used. Here chemicals are used. What kind of chemicals? Here in this chemical method, what is done? The weeds are removed. Weeds are removed by chemicals. For that we call it as chemical method. Then next we have biological method. The next one is biological method. In this biological method, the natural enemies of weeds are used. Actually, the natural enemies of weeds are insects. Insects are going to destroy the weeds. So, in this biological method, the enemies of weeds, enemies of weeds, that is insects, are used to destroy the weeds. So actually what is this weeds? It is the unwanted plant that is growing in the field. So the process of removing weeds from the field is known as weeding. And this removal of weeds can be done by three methods. One is mechanical method, the second is chemical method, the third is biological method. So in mechanical method, it is removed. It is means the weed is removed by our hands or by implements like khurpi or harrow. Then the second method is chemical method. Here the chemicals are used to remove the weeds. Then at last we have biological method. Here the enemies of these weeds are insects. So those insects are used here to destroy those weeds. Is this clear? Then the next is harvesting. What is that? Harvesting. What is actually harvesting? When a crop is fully grown, when a crop is fully grown, what we will do? We will cut it. Is this clear? So what we are going to do? Once the crop is fully grown, the next step what we have to do is we have to cut that crop. The crops which are harvested. So only the crops which have fully grown, only those crops has to be harvested. Then what is the definition of this harvest? The process of cutting. Definition. the process of cutting and gathering of what kind of crops? Gathering of crops is called harvesting. So is this clear? Once the crops are fully grown, the next step what we have to do is we have to cut it. Cut those crops and gather it at a one place. We have to collect them at a one place. This is called as harvesting. Then how this harvesting can be done? It can be done by manually. It can be done by manually or by a machine called harvester. Manually we are going to use sickle, right? Manually this harvesting can be done using sickle, or it can be used by a machine called harvester. Is this clear? In case if cereal crops are going to be harvested, then it has to be followed by threshing. In case we are going to harvest cereal crops, then as soon as harvesting is done to the cereal crops, again threshing has to be followed to it. Is this clear, guys? So harvesting, it is nothing but the crop which is fully grown, we have to cut it and we have to gather it at a one place. This harvesting can be done manually by using a sickle, or it can be used by a machine. Harvesting can be done by a machine called as harvester. In case if the harvested crop is about cereals, means if we are going to harvest cereal crops, then as soon as harvesting is done to cereal crops, those cereal crops has to be again followed by a process called threshing. Then what is this threshing? Here actually what we are going to do is we are going to separate grains. We are going to separate grains. We have to separate grains from the harvested crop. Grains has to be separated from harvested crop. So the process of separating grains, the process of separating grains from harvested crop is said to be threshing. So did you understand what is threshing? Actually what we are doing here, we are separating the grains. We are separating the grains from harvested crop. Is this clear? So the process of separation of grains from harvested crop is known as threshing. Threshing can be done manually. Threshing can be done by manually or by a machine called thresher. So threshing means we have to separate grains from the harvested crop. Once harvesting is done, then what we have to do? We have to separate the grains from that harvested crop. As we all cut and gather it at one place, we have to separate the grains from that harvested crop. That is known as threshing. So this threshing can be done manually or by a machine called thresher. So the machine is thresher. Thresher is a machine used for threshing. Whereas combine This is also a machine. Thresher is a machine which is used only for threshing. Are you getting my point? Thresher is a machine which is used for threshing. Whereas a machine called combine, whereas a machine called combine, this is used for both in the sense it is for harvesting as well as threshing. Harvesting is done by a machine called harvester. Threshing is done by a machine called thresher. And both threshing and harvesting can be done by a single machine called combine. Are you getting my point, children? Actually, harvester is a machine which is used for harvesting, whereas thresher is a machine which is used for threshing. So this combine is a machine which is used for harvesting as well as for threshing. Got it? Then the next is winnowing. Then next is winnowing. Here the grain is getting separated by its chaff. Grain is getting separated by its chaff using the blowing wind. Using the blowing wind. You might have seen people in villages or in fields who will be standing at some height. They'll be holding a, what do you call it, instrument, equipment where chaff as well as these grains are there. So they'll be holding it and they'll be spinning it in the direction of flowing wind. So where the wind is moving in that direction, they'll be standing and they'll be shaking their hands so that the ingredient which is there in that should fall. Whereas this chaff is lighter. Chaff is lighter in weight. So what this chaff is doing is, it is moving. It is flowing along with the wind. It flows or it flies along with the wind. Whereas grain, which is heavier, it is going to fall right in front of the farmer. All have seen, right? So here in this winnowing method, the farmer is dropping the harvested crop. The farmer is dropping the harvested crop from a height. So he is standing on a chair or he is standing on a table. He is holding that harvested crop and he is dropping it slower by slower, so that whatever the chaff is there in the grains is going to get blown away along with the wind, or it is getting carried by the wind, or the chaff is flying, it flies along with the wind, because chaff is lighter in weight, whereas grain which is heavier compared to chaff, so that grain is going to fall, that grain is going to be dropped right in front of the farmer. I think all have seen this, right? As most of your parents are farmers, you might have seen this or you might have used this method. So understood what is winnowing? It is nothing but separating grains from chaff. So here farmer is going to drop the harvested crop from a particular height, so that the lighter weight chaff is going to get blown away with the wind, whereas the grain which is heavier compared to chaff is going to fall right in front of the farmer. So what is chaff here? Chaff is nothing but where the seeds are covered. Okay, the next we have storage. So next it is about storage. Whatever the harvested crops are there, it has to be stored carefully so that it should not be food for insects. Means whatever the crops are harvested, it has to be stored very carefully so that this stored food should not become stored crops should not become food for insects, rats, rodents and all, even fungus. So what farmer is going to do, he is going to dry it in the field for 2 days, because whatever the moisture content is there in the harvested crops has to dry. If it doesn't dry, if we store it with crops having moisture in it, it is going to allow the fungus to grow. So what we have to do, once the harvested crops are done, once the crops are harvested, we have to dry it. Only after drying we should store them. Again, in this storage there are two types. One is dry storage and the other one is cold storage. So what about a dry and cold storage? This dry storage is used for storing non-perishable non-perishable food materials like grains. What is perishable? Actually, the meaning of perishable, what it is? It is decaying or the one which is going to spoil. Perishable means it is going to spoil or it is going to decay. So remember the word here, it is non-perishable means the food items which are not going to spoil or the food items which are not going to decay, they are stored under dry storage. So when storing is on small scale, then they are stored in jute bags. When it is in small scale, then it is stored in jute bags. When it is on large scale, then they are stored under gunny bag, or we call it as silos. Is this understood? When the storing is on small scale, we are going to store it in a jute bag. When this storing is on a large scale, then we are going to store it in gunny bag or silos. Then next, coming to this cold storage. Here, perishable means the food items which are going to spoil, the grains which are going to spoil, right? The food items which are going to spoil or which are going to decay, they are stored under this cold storage, like all vegetables and even fruits. Vegetables and fruits, as these are having small shelf life, as they are having their life very small, that is why they are stored under cold storage. So this was about storage. I think there is nothing much in this dry storage and cold storage. Dry storage means the storage is done for which are not going to spoil or which are not going to decay, whereas this cold storage is only for which is going to spoil and which is going to decay. Is this point clear? Okay, next. The next is food from animals. So how we are going to obtain food from animals? For example, we get milk from cow, buffalo, right? Then we get egg, we get meat, and we get even honey from honeybees. Alright, as we are getting food from the animals, Milk is obtained from animal, egg is also obtained from animal, meat is obtained from animal, and then honey is also obtained from animal known as honeybee. That is why these all are classified under food from animals. As we get these foods from animals, these are nutrient rich, means all these food from animals are rich in nutrients. Milk, egg, and fish, these all are rich in proteins. This is clear. Milk, egg, and fish, these all are rich in proteins. Whereas this meat is rich in fats and proteins. Fats as well as proteins. Then we have liver oil, which is obtained from fish, which is rich in vitamin D. So this was about food from animals. Whatever the food that we are going to get from animals is known as food from animals. For example, milk, egg and fish, these all are animals products, so they are rich in proteins. Milk, egg and fish is rich in protein, whereas meat is rich in fats and proteins, and the oil, liver oil, is rich in vitamin D. So these were about foods from animals. Then last content is about animal husbandry. Animal husbandry. Okay, we'll be seeing this in the next class, right? I think it's too long. So we'll see about animal husbandry, which is only small concept in the next class. Along with that, we'll come to the exercise in the next class. So till then, keep reading textbook, stay home, stay here, take care. Thank you.